On Friday, while many of us were having a good time with our family and friends and enjoying the time away from eBay, Congress passed the Inform Consumers Act, and that will actually impact many sellers here on the platform. So I want to talk to you about that on the other side. So without any further ado, let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's John from Flip It Ain't Easy, and I wanted to go over some of the documentation that I came across. It's the Inform Consumers Act. It was a bill that has been spoken about since May of 2021. I made a video that I will show you right up here if you wanted to check into it and to see what the concern was at the time and my initial reaction and the thought process behind the bill. Thankfully, in a nutshell, the bill isn't as bad as it was going to be. It was going to have more information, more of our personal information put out there for the masses. And in this particular bill, it's still going to be concerning to many of you, but it's not going to be what the bill was. And eBay is praising this as a good thing because they realized it was going to happen in some way, shape, or form. The friends in UK, I know for a fact, are dealing with the situation of having their full address on their store home front. They have their phone number displayed, and I didn't, of course, as a seller, I didn't want to have that because I don't mind my buyers necessarily having access to it, if they keep, in case they need to contact me, or, of course, my address is going to be on the label anyway. But just anybody who's snooping around, maybe with bad intentions, to look at my store and to find my social security number, my phone number, and all that stuff was not going to fly for me. It was a big concern of mine. So I guess you can say this is a win, because when government officials have their mind made up to implement a specific bill and there's a bipartisan support, like in this particular case, it's going to happen. And thankfully, eBay did go to bat for the selling community in this case to try to bring some of these requirements down to just the address. And I want to basically go over to my computer here to talk to you more about that and to kind of show you some of the verbiage that's involved and hopefully give you an understanding of what's going on. So back in May of 2021, about a year and a half ago, I made a video about the Informed Consumer Act that was being pushed through Congress. And I knew it was just a matter of time, but we actually have something that was passed. While you guys were enjoying time with your family back on I believe on the 23rd, on Friday, before they adjourned, they passed as part of the large spending bill, I think it's called the Omnibus Spending Bill or something like that. They passed this Informed Consumers Act, and eBay Main Street seems to be pretty happy about it. So I wasn't happy about it. Many of you weren't happy about it when we first talked about it, and eBay is now pleased because it's a compromise. It's a compromise that the information that we thought was going to be put out for anyone to see, like our tax ID information. For some of you, that's your social security number, your phone number, things like that. It's not going to be that bad. Essentially, in a nutshell, if you sell a certain amount, and we'll get to the verbiage in this, but if you sell a certain amount on eBay, your information will be, and your address information will be given to the customer on the invoice once they've purchased from you. But that's the key for me, because I don't want random people having access to my address information. Of course, it's a good idea to get that P.O. box. For me, I don't want to drive to the post office. I want to do all my work from home. But it may just be that, I've been talking about it, something that I should do and maybe you should do as well. But let's get to the bill. This is on eBay Main Street, and ebaymainstreet.com. You can find this. Congress passes Informed Consumers Act, December 23rd, 2022. Prior to adjourning for the year, Congress passed fiscal year 2023 omnibus appropriations legislation to fund the federal government. So that's like for their spending their budget for the year. On behalf of the millions of small businesses and individuals who buy and sell online, eBay is happy to report that the Informed Consumers Act was included in the final package and is on its way to the president's desk to be signed into law. Now, Congress has this thing. They like to stuff a lot of things, a lot of bills into the budget so that if you don't approve this budget, right, which includes, in this case, the Informed Consumers Act and all kinds of other stuff they like to throw in these bills, then the government essentially will be shut down. So they're kind of forcing all the parties involved to approve this bill as a whole package, which includes the Informed Consumers Act. Otherwise, it's kind of catastrophic for, the country, and, everything shut down and it's kind of chaotic. So it's a tactic that's used, but I think that there is support on both sides, both Republican and Democrat, both, supported this bill. While the original version of the Informed Consumers Act would have imposed a burdensome information collection and disclosure requirements for small businesses and individuals, eBay led efforts to vastly improve the bill to provide a nationwide standard that strikes an appropriate balance to increase transparency and safety for customers online, which also protects seller privacy. This compromised legislation avoids a patchwork of state laws and has broad support from consumer groups, retailers, and law enforcement. So essentially what it is it's a compromise. So instead of having, your tax ID information for everyone to see, like on your store, right, on your eBay store, your phone number and your address. And I can tell you, got some friends in the UK, friends of this channel, and their information right now as we speak, their address information, their phone number is on their store page for anyone. I mean, someone that's not even a serious buyer, someone that's looking to just do havoc, and maybe use their phone number for nefarious or address for nefarious reasons. That's for all the world to see. And so it is a compromise in that is not going to happen to us sellers. The eBay government relations team would like to thank U.S. Representatives Jan Schakowsky, Democrat, Gus Bilrakis, Republican, as well as U.S. Senators Dick Durbin and Bill Cassidy for introducing the Informed Consumers Act legislation to the House and Senate respectively, and for their leadership and tireless efforts, blah, 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 blah. So this doesn't really spell anything out. It just basically says we're happy, blah, blah, blah. So if we move over to this e-commerce bites, this is Ina Steiner. The Informed Consumers Act directs online marketplaces to verify high-volume third-party sellers by authenticating the seller's government ID, tax ID, bank account information, and contact information. High-volume third-party sellers are defined as vendors who have made 200 or more sales in a 12-month period amounting to $5,000 or more. The legislation instructs online marketplaces to ensure that their high-volume third-party sellers disclose to consumers basic identity and contact information. Now, if we go back here, this is basically saying that not that you're going to have to display your government ID, tax ID, bank account information, right? It's basically saying that the sites you're selling on will have to have this information. Well, for those of you who are selling on eBay, you already know that eBay has your bank account information if you want to get paid. They have your government ID and they have your tax ID on hand. So it shouldn't be anything more than you're already used to at this point. So it goes on to say the online marketplace will also need to supply a hotline to allow customers to report to the marketplace suspicious marketplace activity, such as the posting of suspected, stolen, counterfeit, or dangerous products. The bill presents an exception for individual high-volume third-party sellers that permits them not to have their personal street address or personal phone number revealed to the public if they respond to customers' questions over email within a reasonable time frame. So it's looking like eBay will prevent that information from being shown in your store if you are one of those sellers that get back to your customer within a timely manner. Now, there's no parameters that's actually spelled out here, but if you're one of those sellers that have messages that are just piled up and not answered to, and you sell over 500 items, actually 200 items in a year, and over $5,000 worth of sales in that year, then chances are you're going to have your information displayed if you're not responding in a timely manner. Now, the bill's requirements would be implemented by the FTC, and violations would be subject to civil penalties, meaning that eBay or all these other sites, Mercari, Poshmark, Etsy, all those sites are going to be required to police this. And if they're not doing what the bill requires them to do, they could be subject to civil penalties, right? So, of course, anytime that a company is threatened with, a loss of revenue, usually keeps them in line. So trust me, eBay's happy to implement this because they see it as a compromise. And trust me, it's going to be one of those things. If you're a seller on the site, you're going to have to start being on top of your messages and not letting those lapse. On Friday, eBay praised its passage and explained one of its biggest advantages. It avoids a patchwork of state laws. Sellers who continue to deal with collecting and remitting sales tax to states, each with their own rules, understand the benefit of a single federal law on a particular issue. And we don't really have to worry about this so much on eBay because they automatically remit the sales tax on our behalf, so that's not a big deal. Before its passage, there had been heavy lobbying from big box retailers and online platforms, each side pushing their own agendas. 3 days before the passage of the omnibus bill, the National Retail Federation said requiring online marketplaces to verify high-volume third-party sellers would help curb the fencing of stolen merchandise, a serious and costly problem for retail stores. So the idea behind all this, at least what we're being told as the reason for this bill, is to curb a lot of the stolen goods that are sold on eBay. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a thing. I'm sure it's a thing, but it's like this. Most sellers are honest, good people. A coalition of marketplaces called Protect America's Small Businesses, PASS, said the version that passed on Friday provides crucial protections for the small sellers who use our platforms to sell their unique and creative products. Sellers discussing the new provisions had varying reactions. Some praised the law, seeing no reason why sellers shouldn't publicly provide their contact information. Others disagreed, citing sellers who work from home and have safety concerns. Some sellers felt the definition of high volume was too low. 200 transactions totaling $5,000 in a year would work out to an average of 4 transactions totaling $95 a week, which is a very low bar. I agree with that. Marketplaces already had to comply with some state versions of the Inform law, and eBay help pages currently explains, what's going on. There are 3 exceptions to sharing sellers' full physical address, one of which is if your address is your residential address, only state and country will be shown. And we've yet to determine if that will remain the case under the newly passed federal law. If you are shipping your item from, eBay labels or whatever, this information is going to appear on the label anyway. Now, my concern, and it was the concern in the video that I made before, if the information is like the UK sellers, where it's a part of your store, like your store home front page, when it has all your information. The concern was the tax ID, which is, an invitation for, identity theft, right? Your phone number, which is an invitation to possible harassment, and unwanted phone calls. And of course, your address, which is what we're talking about here. And if you're a seller that abides by eBay's policies, contacting these buyers in a timely manner when they send you a message, and you have so many transactions, and your address is a physical address, a residential address, only your state and country will be shown. And I have no problem with that whatsoever, that part of it. So before I continue, I just want you to comment down below. I want to know what you think about this. You know, again, we talk about this all the time. eBay, it's eBay's sandbox, right? But eBay will still try to advocate for their sellers because they realize that if the government requires every seller to include the social security number, the phone number, right? It's going to chase a lot of people away. And it's not going to feel like a safe selling environment to sellers. I can just tell you that. So the idea that the government pretty much dropped those recommendations, no social security number, no phone number, right, from being displayed to the customer is a good thing to me. Now, from my understanding, from what I've read, is that when you sell an item to a customer, the information that they will receive will basically display your address. And in some cases, there will be an exception made for those larger sellers who sell from their residence. It'll just display the city, state, and country, I believe. So that's not a big deal because if I'm selling something to someone anyway, they're going to get that information on the mailing label, the return address on the mailing label anyway. So I don't see a big harm in this bill, but I want to know what you guys think down below. Maybe I missed something here, but that's why I tried to go and read verbatim from eBay's little press release that they put out. And I also went over to e-commerce bites on the article that Ina Steiner put out so that you guys can kind of see for yourself, just reading it verbatim, as to what's going on. So, of course, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. I'd appreciate that, guys. And you know what? If you like the channel, if you like the content that we put out, please consider hitting that subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. So when it comes to changes like this, uncomfortable legislation like this, it's another example of sometimes how flipping ain't easy. Do me a favor, click on the video that I made back in 2021. It's right here. Click on that for more information about what the bill was intended to be, to give you a better understanding of why eBay feels it's a win. And join me today at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern for a live stream, and we can talk about it or other topics and answer your questions at that time. Take care, everyone.